Last week I did a video about 15 sleepers for the 2025 NFL Draft, and you guys really enjoyed it, so we're going to go ahead and do a part 2. Some of these are suggestions that you guys put down in the comment section below, and others are more guys that I came up with. Today we're going to talk about 15 more players, go through who they are, where their current draft stock is, and my thoughts on them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about 15 more NFL draft sleepers. Okay, so the first guy I want to talk about is Jay Higgins. He's currently a linebacker for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and he's been a big name for a couple of years now. He ended up coming out of Brebeuf High School in Indianapolis, and Higgins was considered a 3-star recruit and the number 63 inside linebacker in the class of 2020. Higgins would end up arriving at Iowa, and over the years he slowly got better. He had 2 tackles in 2020, 5 in 2021, and then 40 in 2022. Higgins really made a name for himself in 2023, finishing with 171 total tackles, 3 pass deflections, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He decided to return for the Hawkeyes in 2024, and in total he had 124 tackles and 2 forced fumbles with 4 interceptions. Higgins has put up ridiculous numbers, but right now he's only projected as a 7th round pick and the 195th overall player. Despite being invited to the Combine, his stock has for some reason fallen, as at one point he was seen as a 3rd or 4th rounder, and now he's seen as a 7th rounder. I think the guy is going under the radar, and will make teams pay for not getting him higher. Our second guy is going to be Mario Williams. Coming out of high school, Mario Williams was a borderline 5-star recruit and ended up going to Plant High School. As a senior, he had 40 catches for 700 yards and 8 touchdowns, and because of that, he became the number 15 wide receiver in the country and would decide to commit to Oklahoma. Alongside Caleb Williams, Mario Williams had helped blow up as a true freshman for them, and then would end up following Caleb and Lincoln Riley to USC. He sort of got buried on the depth chart there, as in his 2 years with the Trojans, he did end up having 69 catches, but in 2023 he only had 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Looking for greener pastures, he transferred to Tulane, where in his 1 year with the Green Wave, he became their top receiver, catching 60 passes for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's now projected as an undrafted free agent and the 550th overall player. I think that's a little bit low, as Williams was at one point a really big name, and he saved his career. One of the fastest rising players in this year's draft class is defensive lineman Darius Alexander. But going back in time, this guy came out of nowhere. He went to Wayne High School in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and had 87 tackles and 10 sacks as a senior. But despite that, he'd only become a 2-star recruit and was the number 126 weak side defensive end in the class of 2019. Alexander would eventually arrive at Toledo, where in his half a decade with the Rockets, would put up numbers, especially in his last 2 years. This past season, he ended up having 40 tackles, 4 pass deflections, 3.5 sacks, and 1 interception. That ended up being a pick 6. At 6'4", Alexander's sort of a freak of nature. He's got plenty of experience, and that's why NFL Mock Database has him listed as a 2nd round pick and the 46th best prospect. He also has a 7% chance of going in the 1st round, and Alexander's a guy that nobody really knows about or was talking about, but I think is a sleeper in this year's draft class still. The son of former NFL player Oronde Gadsden, he ended up having a son in Oronde Gadsden II, and he went to American Heritage High School out in Florida. He was a part of the class of 2021, and this is because he had 37 catches for 13 touchdowns his senior year. Gadsden was only a 3-star recruit though, and would decide to sign with Syracuse. While he was with the Orange, he had a really good career for them, with his best 2 seasons coming in 2022 and 2024 due to an injury in 2023. He had 61 catches for 900 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2022, and then this past season, 73 catches for 934 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's one of the better tight end prospects in this year's draft class, and currently Gadsden is a projected 6th round pick and the 176th overall prospect. But for now, I think this guy's going under the radar, as I've sort of heard about him as a draft prospect for 3 years now. Okay, so our next guy is Cobee Bryant. No, not the guy from the Los Angeles Lakers who has unfortunately passed, but instead the cornerback from Kansas. Coming out of Evergreen, Alabama, Cobee Bryant wasn't exactly that big of a name coming out of high school, as he was the number 64 corner and a 3-star recruit in the class of 2020. Cobee would end up arriving as a Les Miles guy and would actually start playing in 2021, but had his best statistical season in 2024, finishing with 37 tackles, 7 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, and 4 interceptions. He also had 5 pass deflections in 2023. And Cobee Bryant is one of the more solid corners in this year's draft class and is definitely going under the radar. Currently, he's a projected 5th round pick and the 134th overall draft prospect and has a 1% chance of going in the first round. We'll have to wait and see what happens with him, but Cobee is definitely going under the radar in my opinion. The second guy I want to talk about is Collin Oliver from Oklahoma State. Going back in time, Oliver ended up coming out of Santa Fe High School in Oklahoma and actually was a pretty big deal. Ultimately, he was the number 29 linebacker in his class and was actually a 4-star recruit. He would arrive in Stillwater in 2021, and throughout his time there, Oliver ended up having a really good couple of seasons. As a true freshman, he ended up having 11.5 sacks and 1 forced fumble, and it looked like he was going to set the college football world on fire. Unfortunately, he would never have a repeat of that season, as his best year from then would come on in 2023 with 73 tackles and 6 sacks plus 4 forced fumbles. It seems that Oliver moved from the edge to the linebacker spot, but this past season, he was injured in week 2 against Arkansas, and because of this, he has fallen. Oliver is now a projected 7th round pick and the 215th overall prospect, and for a guy who had 11.5 sacks as a true freshman, he did fall off a bit. Oliver is one of those players who I think will be productive at the NFL level, but will probably go later in the draft, and teams will wish they would have taken him higher. Turning our attention back to the offensive side of the ball, we need to talk about Tory Horton Jr. He was a much bigger name this past offseason, as coming out of Washington Union High School in California, he ended up having limited numbers. He committed to play college football at the University of Nevada, and would eventually start to blow up while he was there. He ended up playing 2 years with the Wolfpack, having nearly 70 catches and 1,000 yards and 10 total touchdowns. After that, he would follow Jay Norvell to Colorado State, and he'd have 2 tremendous years. He had 71 catches in 2022 and 96 catches in 2023, and went for about 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns in those 2 seasons. Colorado State had an absolute star, and Tory Horton turned down offers from big-time schools to come back for 1 more season. Unfortunately, Horton would end up getting hurt this past year as he get hurt against San Jose State. According to NFL Mock Database, he's currently a 4th round pick and the 107th overall prospect. He has a 2% chance going in the first round and ran a 4.41 40, so he should be a steal. He's very similar to Michael Gallup's story a couple years back, and we'll see what he can do, but I think he's a gem. One guy who really helped BYU as they had their breakout 2024 season was defensive end Tyler Batty. Coming out of Payson High School in Utah, he would decide to go to BYU all along, and somehow, someway, this guy's been playing for a long time. In fact, he was a part of the class of 2017, and due to his mission and using all of his eligibility, Batty seemingly played forever in college football. At 6'5", he's become a decent defensive end, and this past year he had 59 tackles with 2 pass deflections and 1.5 sacks. He also had 2 interceptions. He has started for 4.5 years now for BYU, and according to NFL Mock Database, he's a projected 7th round pick and the 195th best prospect. He was actually as high as the top 150s at one point, but he's fallen a bit. I think Batty's one of those guys that'll come in and produce right away because of his experience and how long he's been playing football. One of the most saddest and inspiring players in this year's draft is Jack Bech. Unfortunately, his brother ended up getting killed in all that Sugar Bowl stuff in New Orleans, but Bech ended up honoring him by catching a game-winning pass in the Senior Bowl. Going back in time, Bech was a 4-star recruit coming out of St. Thomas More High School in Lafayette, Louisiana, and originally went to LSU. Bech was seen as a pretty big deal for the Tigers, as in his first season he caught 43 passes for 3 touchdowns. His production fell in 2022, and then he would transfer to TCU in 2023. Finally, this past season, he would break out into their number 1 target as he caught 62 passes for 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns. He became one of the better receivers in the Big 12, and all of a sudden, he had saved his career. He ended up making the move from tight end to wide receiver, and he's a really good athlete and has had decent production, which is why scouts are somewhat high on him, projecting him as a 3rd round pick and the number 66 player in this year's draft class. He has a 3% chance of going in the first round, and over the last few months, his stock has done nothing but rise. Good for Jack. Our next guy epitomized slow and steady winning the race, as Pat Bryant slowly got better throughout the years. Going back in time, he came out of Jacksonville, Florida, and after having a really good high school career, the 3-star recruit would end up going to Illinois. He was definitely a hidden gem, and Pat Bryant caught 6 passes his freshman year, before then having 34 catches in 2022, helping them break out. In 2023, Bryant became the best option behind Isaiah Williams, catching 43 passes and 7 touchdowns. He finally put it all together in 2024, leading Illinois to 10 wins, and he had 54 receptions for 984 yards and 10 total touchdowns. Because of that, Pat Bryant is now projected as a 6th round pick and the 175th overall player. I don't think this guy is going to be an NFL superstar by any means, but I think he's definitely going under the radar because of the offensive system he played at Illinois. And to me, he's one of those guys who has experience and grit, so I would take him a little bit higher than the number 6 round. Our next guy is an absolute hidden gem, and that is CJ West. Coming out of Nazareth Academy in Illinois, CJ West was the number 99 defensive tackle in the country and was barely ranked inside the top 2,000. He was part of the class of 2020 and went over to Kent State, where in a couple of seasons he ended up putting up good numbers. He had 42 tackles in 2021, 26 in 2022, and then in 2023, he also had a really good year for the Golden Flashes, which is why he decided to enter the transfer portal. After 4 years in Ohio, he moved one state over to Bloomington, Indiana, and took over as a starter on the defensive line for the Hoosiers. He ended up having 42 total tackles, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. Obviously, this guy is an interior lineman, and currently, he's starting to blow up. I've seen him as high as the 2nd round and as low as the 5th round. The NFL Mock Database has him as a 4th round pick and the 113th best player on their big board. CJ West is Indiana's top draft prospect and has a cool story, and I think is going under the radar. Another wide receiver we need to talk about is Xavier Restrepo. He was only a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, as he went to both St. Thomas Aquinas and Deerfield Beach High School in Florida, and had over 3,000 receiving yards and 2,500 rushing yards. He ended up committing to play for Miami, and was apparently really good friends with their quarterback Tyler Van Dyke. That would end up paying off for him, as he would start to break out in 2021, catching 24 passes for 373 yards and 2 touchdowns. He'd end up falling off a bit in 2022, but these last 2 years in Miami have been terrific for him. He had 85 catches for 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2023, and then 69 catches for 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns in 2024. Restrepo is one of the better receivers in recent memory for the Canes, and now, according to NFL Mock Database, he's a projected 4th round pick and the 114th overall prospect. His stock has for some reason started to dip in the last couple of weeks, as he was in the top 80 back in March, but now is in the upper 100s. Not sure what's going on, but I think Restrepo will be a reliable target in the league. Our next guy is sort of an exception to the rule, as it's Gunnar Helm from Texas. Coming out of high school, Gunnar Helm was not exactly seen as the biggest prospect, as he was only a 3-star recruit, but I guess somewhat of a late riser. He chose Texas over Bama and Auburn, and Gunnar Helm would slowly go up the depth chart, catching 5 passes in 22, then 14 catches in 2023, and then this past season became one of their top pass catchers with 60 receptions for 786 yards and 7 touchdowns. At 6'5", Helm is one of the more intriguing tight ends in this year's draft class, and he's currently a projected 4th round pick and the 99th overall prospect. He's one of those tight ends that I think will make a big impact on Sundays, and is just another big-time Texas draft prospect we've seen over the last couple of years. In part 1, we talked about Oklahoma defensive player Billy Bowman Jr. I'm going to add another Oklahoma guy in Danny Stutsman. He was only a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, but coming out of Foundation Academy, he had 110 tackles his senior year, and also had nearly 1,000 yards receiving. He became one of the best players in school history, finishing with over 300 tackles and 20 sacks, and decided to commit to Oklahoma. Stutsman would play a couple of years in Norman, and he had a big role in each of them. He had over 100 tackles in each of the 2022, 2023, and 2024 seasons, and the guy was close to 400 tackles in his career for them. He's also decent in terms of pass deflections, had 8 career sacks, 4 career forced fumbles, and 3 career interceptions. Stutsman's currently a projected 4th round pick and the number 106 prospect, and I think he's definitely going to be a steal. There are some things he's lacking, but he produced and I think has a lot of long-term potential. And the final player I want to talk about in today's video is Keandre Lambert-Smith. Coming out of the state of Virginia, he had over 1,500 yards and 26 touchdowns as a senior, and committed to Penn State over many big-time programs. Keandre was a 4-star and a top 200 player in his class, and he ended up going to Penn State, but wasn't really able to fully put it all together. I mean, he was decent for a couple of seasons, but his best year would come in 2023, finishing with 53 catches for 673 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was a decent receiver at best, but he decided to transfer to Auburn for one last season, and he ended up improving his stock. He had 50 catches for 981 yards and 8 touchdowns, all of which were pretty much career highs, and he did this despite an inept offense and an inept quarterback. Even though he has the size and the abilities, he's a current projected undrafted free agent and the 233rd overall player. He's pretty dang close to the cut line, and I bet he'll be taken in the 7th round, and is someone who could be a steal, I think. So yeah, Today we talked about 15 underrated prospects for this year's draft, and let me know what you think of these players, and if I should do a part 3, and if so, drop another prospect. Also, before you go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.